So I am going backpacking in the morning, and I am taking CS Instant Coffee with me for the trip because I don't want to carry a French press or a coffee maker, and it comes in compostable packaging. If you'd like a discount on some CS Instant Coffee yourself, check out the show notes. And when I get home, I will be having an Athletic Brewing craft beer. They are non-alcoholic, and I'm going to be watching my little one, and I don't want to get intoxicated while the wife's away, so I'm going to have a non-alcoholic beer. You never know. And I also can rest assured knowing that they're only 50 calories and taste great. Discount for them as well in the show notes.
It was on the other side of this bridge, there's no road. It was on an abandoned trail up to a mine that we wanted to check out. What is this? Why is this here? There's got to be some amazing story about how this thing ended up in a place that it should not be.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we talk to athletes, adventurers, and business owners from around the world of adventure sports. Whether you're climbing Mount Everest, starting a bike shop, or getting up off your couch to take your kids hiking for the first time, we want you to have the motivation and inspiration you need to chase that next adventure. The Adventure Sports Podcast is brought to you by Camp Crate, the leaders in fully planned self-guided backpacking adventures, as well as backpacking gear rental. You can check them out at campcrate.net. I use guidebooks when I plan my trips, whether it's road trips or hiking trips, backpacking stuff. I had no idea what actually goes into one of those books, but today we get to talk to an author of a brand new guidebook for Alpine Lakes Wilderness. Nathan Barnes and his brother Jeremy spent a crazy amount of time learning everything they needed to know to tell other people about this area called Alpine Lakes Wilderness. The book has over 100 hikes. It's day hikes and classic like backpacking routes. Check it out. There's a link in the show notes where you can find it and you can search it on Amazon. We're going to hear about what it takes to be someone that writes one of those guidebooks. And maybe you listen to the show and say, I've done a lot in this area and I've never seen a guidebook for it. Maybe it's something you want to tackle yourself. I'm sure Nathan or Jeremy wouldn't mind reaching out to them at all. But it took way more dedication than I thought. Kudos to them for doing it. If that's what it takes for every book that's out there, man, I'm glad people are out there that are willing to do that, because I don't think I'm capable. But anyway, hope you had a great weekend. This is a great episode. Nathan was fantastic. Let's get into it. Usually we have someone doing a feat on the show. Maybe they're, doing some crazy adventure, but this is an adventure in itself because it's kind of a combination of different kinds of journeys. One in gaining the experience of knowing an area so well that you can write a book about it. And with us today is Nathan Barnes. He and his brother wrote Alpine Lakes Wilderness, a hiking guide to that. Nathan, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the technical name of the book is Alpine Lakes Wilderness, the Complete Hiking Guide, correct?
Yeah, you want to get that second title in there.
Yeah, that's right. That's semicolon, man. It's a colon. Official. Now, this is cool, man. So where exactly is the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, and how did you get into going out there and gaining all this knowledge? That's a big question.
I'll start with the easy one. Which is where it's located. The Alpine Lakes Wilderness is located east of Seattle, and it spans many hundreds of thousands of square miles, and between Highway 2 and I-90, making it really, really accessible to people that live in the major metropolitan areas or the Puget Sound region. So parts of it get a lot of, especially the stuff on I-90, they get a lot of visits, and so it's nice and approachable. That said, that's the easy part. Like, locating it is easy. How I got into it was back in 2008. My brother and I decided, that's probably 2007, we decided that we were going to climb Mount Rainier. We get into an age, we're out of college, we're like, okay, well, what's the next challenge? And so we decided to we're gonna summit Rainier. It's on the Seattle skyline. You see it every day, and so like I'm gonna go to the top of that. And so yeah, there's a lot of training that got involved in that. Even though we were doing a guided descent, we wanted to make sure we were up for it. We didn't want to not make it. So we spent a lot of time hiking, and we discovered we really enjoyed doing it. After, we'd always hiked, but it was something that once, twice a week we were doing. And after we got up there in September, October 2008, somewhere in there, we decided, well, let's keep doing this. And like I said, one of the easiest and most accessible wilderness areas around Seattle is the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. We picked up, or we already had a hiking guide called From the Mountaineers, which is the publisher of this book, called 55 Hikes around Snoqualmie Pass, which runs right along the southern edge of the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. So we decided, okay, well, we need a goal. Let's go through this book. And we did. We systematically went through every single hike in that book. And along the way, we started journaling what we were doing. That started with a blog, and that eventually evolved into a full-scale website, hikingwithmybrother.com. And out of that, we started publishing books. And we've been doing that since that time. And the Mountaineers approached us a few years ago and said, hey, a lot of your core stuff is Alpine Lakes Wilderness. We really like what you're doing. What do you pitch us some ideas? One of the ideas we pitched was this book, and they picked it up, and here we are.
Very cool. Did you guys, I don't know if you said, did you guys get to see, or to get to climb Rainier together?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We absolutely, we climbed it. We did it. We got to the top. We had a harrowing experience at the top. We were, just a quick aside, we got up there. It was gorgeous, beautiful, tough climb. Took 2 days. We're coming down, and we're roped into a guide. It's just my brother and I and a guide. And we're roped in. As we're going down, we passed this group of folks who are kind of kicking around, taking a break, and they accidentally dislodged this huge boulder. It was probably, 3 or 4 feet across, and it's, we're in a gully, and it's coming down at us. And the guide says, left. And so the guide and I jump left. My brother jumps right. And we see this boulder coming down, and I had to end up pulling the rope as he literally jumped and almost skipped off the rock as it was coming down. So after an experience like that, we're like, let's keep hiking. Let's keep doing this.
Right. Golly, that's crazy.
Yeah, we'd already had a little bit of an adrenaline rush to get to the top that morning, but that really filled out the adrenaline for the day.
Interesting. So I guess summiting those, mountaineering is an essentially, you weren't interested in doing more of that then? Sorry, I have no idea why that was so hard for me to get out.
You're trying to put it delicate. Yeah, you're trying to say, hey, I noticed after you had this experience, you stopped mountaineering. What's the deal with that? No, we still do the occasional mountaineering. We summited St. Helens, and still on our list for years is Adams. But we decided we wanted to do something that we could do every day. Initially, this was something we were doing every single weekend, if not more. And we wanted that consistency because that's how we were training for the mountain when we did it, and we just kind of wanted to keep that going. It's also a time to get to catch up with family, right? My brother and I, we led and continue to lead busy lives, and so it's a chance for us to get together. So that the hiking really was a much more approachable way of doing it. And then, like any project, it starts growing into a life of its own. And then you're just trying to do, and then you're just like, oh, we just got to keep putting out more hikes because people want it, and we're having a good time with it. And it's sort of taken on a life of its own. So that's the mountaineering stuff sort of slid by the wayside.
I guess being here in Colorado, I don't know if you feel the same way. There's this pressure to like summit mountains, and I don't necessarily enjoy that as much as just hiking. And seeing it all from like the Alpine area. I really love the Alpine, kind of range. Oh, yeah. And so I'm like, I don't feel the need to get on top of that, but then there is this pressure. So I'm glad, you didn't feel like you had to keep doing that. And you wrote this guide to help people get out there, because that area, I have a little experience with it, but just the Pacific Northwest in general, those mountains, man, might make some people mad saying this, but I think they're way more pretty than the mountains we have here in Colorado.
Well, I've experienced both.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't say one is necessary. I think they're very different in a different way. And you're probably feeling that pressure, I would guess, because there's just a lot more summits that are accessible that feel like true summits. I've we have climbed to the top of many a small, hill and mountain that you could say is a summit, but it's nothing compared to the access that you have to some of these really tall peaks there in the Denver area. So slightly different. There's equal pressure to get out there. There's just so much to see, as you said, and some of it is really stunning, really, really gorgeous. Especially some of these alpine areas that look like you're on the edge of the moon, where there's almost you just crest over that vegetation line, and things look almost like an alien landscape, and it can be that starkness can be really not only stunning but really moving. So we have a lot of that, and I think that's a little rarer than Colorado, just because of all the glaciation that we had here.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes some very extreme terrain. But I love that. I love that jagged silhouette of the mountains that you guys have. It's just, it's gorgeous. Everywhere you turn is this beauty that's unbelievable. And then the ocean's down at the bottom, which is awesome. Down at the bottom of our mountains is Kansas,
Yeah, it's almost unfair. I'll say that. Yeah, we're very privileged.
Yeah. And now I'm on your website, hikingwithmybrother.com, and I'm looking at this map. This map pops up with all these dots on it. Are those all hikes?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
It's a mass.
We used to have a running total at the top of how many hikes we had done, and it kind of got silly at a certain point. It's like, okay, well, there's 300 hikes on here. What does that mean?
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot. That's not all. And we're a little behind on publishing things, so it's not all of them either. We got wrapped up in finishing this book and working on another one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And so you said you both lead, professional, busy lives. What do you guys do?
My brother's he's an engineer, he's a process engineer, all that sort of stuff, helping out Children's Hospital, making sure their processes work and helping them develop the tools that they need to do a better job. So, working in medicine, very highly technical stuff. I'm an attorney by trade, and I work in the commercial real estate field. So, suitably dry and boring. A lot of like, a lot of numbers, a little bit of sales, a lot of legal. Not that exciting.
So, clear to say that this isn't your full-time gig. Which
no,
which is cool because you're creating this. You look at that map and that looks like enough hiking for a lifetime, and there's still tons of areas you've never that aren't on that list. You know what I'm saying? And probably places you haven't even been within just a few hours drive of where you live. And all that to say is you have this professional side, but you also have the ability to have a lot of adventure.
Oh yeah. And, getting out there and taking and really disconnecting from, being busy, making your daily grind. And that's, as I was saying earlier, it's really a privilege living in a place like the Puget Sound area, where there's just literally so much to do. It's impossible. You're looking at 10 years of fairly intensive hiking when you open that up. And, it easily could be a lifetime for someone for most people who maybe don't spend year after year hiking every single weekend or doing weekends in which you're doing 5 or 6 hikes. There's just so much to see and so much to do and so many trails out there that, we could do that for another 10 years and still have a lifetime left. That's why it's great to focus on a place like Alpine Lakes Wilderness. We're very project oriented, my brother and I. We like to do something, go deep on it. And have like a list of stuff. Okay, well, what will it take to complete this? And that initial book that we started with, the Alpine Lakes, is a similar way. There's a few stretches of trail that we didn't get to, but it's just because they were so deep in the interior. It took 2 days to hike to it. But 95% of the trails and things that you can see in Alpine Lakes Wilderness is in this book. And that's just kind of the completionists that we are. And one of the reasons, when you look in that map, it's like, hey, I noticed that the North Cascades National Park, you have almost nothing up there. It's like, yeah, we haven't gotten to that one yet. I'll have to take that one down next.
Did it ever just get old at some point, saying like, gosh, we're going, back a few miles from where we were a couple months ago or a couple weekends ago to do this other loop that's, just in another drainage or another valley over or something? Did that get overwhelming?
It didn't get overwhelming, but there's certainly some fatigue involved
Mm,
when you're going back to this. There's limited access.
exactly. I'm sure you parked at the same trailhead like 15 times.
Exactly. And you just sort of like, there's a certain point where you're like, I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be so experienced in this trailhead that, when I'm approaching it, I'm going, oh man, I hope the cars are not parked in this certain way that they always park. That's really aggravating. And just, yeah.
That's crazy that you know a place that well. That is
Yeah.
nuts. Was there a guide like this for that wilderness area before that you're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, back many years ago, back in the early 90s, there was a guide similar to this that, I haven't compared it line for line, but it was published by the Mountaineers. It's a great guide by Harvey Manning and Ira Spring, who are sort of some of the most prodigious guidebook authors of the last generation. And our model is actually kind of similar to theirs. Like Harvey did the writing and Ira did the photography. I do the writing and my brother does the photography, and he does maps and stuff as well. So it's a similar model. And I suddenly just lost my train of thought about what I was talking about. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
It was guidebook. Was there a guidebook about this area before?
Oh yes, sorry. I was
no worries, man.
About
when
Harvey
you
Manning
talk,
too.
I just look all this stuff up, and then I kind of forget where I am because it's like, oh, I got to make sure I mark that down or bookmark that because that sounds awesome.
Sorry. Yeah. So there was a guide that was similar to this. It might not have been quite as comprehensive, but it was made in the 90s and late 80s. So it doesn't have the visuals that this one does. They released a couple of editions, and then subsequently they sort of the Mountaineers decided to split it off to make it a little bit more digestible because it's such a vast area. It was hard to find to get something that was even close to being complete. And then a couple of years ago, one of the things that we pitched to them, as I said earlier, was why not go back to a complete guide, because we'll take that on. We'll do that. And they're like, and finding people that are willing to do going to that trailhead 15 times to do the work that needs to be done to make a guide like this is a little hard to find. So
did you have competition?
They picked this up. Not as far. I mean, I not as far as I know, but it could have. I'm not that familiar with their process as to how they wanted this.
I mean, if you saw the same like red truck at every trailhead that you were at, like, there's somebody else doing this.
Yeah, that I should have thought of that. No, I don't think we noticed any competition. There's as you probably know, and you probably talked to a lot of people, like the guidebook authors are kind of a rare breed. You got to have a certain,
I'm sure
drive.
it's a small network of people that are working on that for sure. So doing that with your brother, I mean, obviously you guys must just get along impeccably to be able to coordinate that much hiking. And now, how many of these trips were they all overnight, or most of them overnight?
We strove really hard to try and make sure that there was a good mix of stuff that people could just do as day hikes, and also people that wanted to do like a 5-day backpack. They were able to do that. That sort of access was important. So not all of them were overnights. We did probably more overnights than someone might need to do all of these, because we're just trying to be efficient about getting the hikes in and not retracing our steps too many times. But we're family, so like anything else, we get along quite well, but we can also get on each other's nerves and have disagreements about how to do certain things when you put together something like this. And but we normally, yes, we get along great. We have a lot of similar views, and we don't have a lot of dissent and fighting. Otherwise, we would have just the trail hours. We would have killed each other by now.
Oh man, I can only imagine. That's nuts. That's a lot of work to put into to make sure it's with someone you enjoy. Now, Man, that's just, I mean, the logistics involved, the coordination involved, the ability to stick with it, the stick-to-itiveness is unbelievable. Just looking at, I guess I've never looked at a physical visual representation of all the individual trips within essentially a guidebook. You know what I mean? This ain't even all of them. It's just blowing my mind looking at this map. And it just makes me, I mean, it makes me think like, okay, you probably got to some point where you thought, I am so familiar with this place, nothing surprises me. But were there surprises out there that were kind of once in a lifetime or really, really rare that happened despite going out there so many times to the same area?
Well, there's basically only two major sort of environments that you can get into. What side of the mountains you're on?
Yeah.
One side's a little drier, one side's a little wetter. So in terms of getting out there and experiencing it, there weren't a lot of surprises after a certain point. But that said, the surprising thing always came about was you would read about a destination beforehand, and you would be prepared for what that destination was going to look like. But invariably, there were at least a handful of times when you would get there and go, everything that was described to me, this just did no justice to what this looks like.
Right.
And there's a seasonality to it. So a lot of these places, most people experience in the summer because, first of all, it's easier hiking season. And second of all, most people just aren't in the mood to go out and say the fall. Some of these landscapes in like late fall they're gorgeous on a whole different level. Like there's so much color painted against a bleak landscape. So specifically, there's larches that grow in a lot of enchantment area and sort of nearby areas of the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, and it's stunning. They turn this bright yellow and light orange colors, and the snows usually are you got patches of snow on the ground. You've got just a whole visual range, just a panorama of like slate gray granite, almost maybe some patches of heather, a little bit of green here and there, but it all taken all together, it is truly surprisingly stunning. Like it jars you, that you're just not expecting it. One hike that's in the book that I definitely experienced, that was our hike up to Larch Lake, because you go through this. I mean, when you finally get to it, it's an overnight to even get to it. But as you get to the final approach, you go through this sort of a little bit of a valley, and that valley in the fall, just all the foliage changes to a dark red. So you're in this reddish kind of brownish area. There's a creek running through it. And you sort of emerge from that up onto a plateau into this bowl of just bare granite and golden larches. And, there's this nice lake put up there, but just to kind of center around everything. And in that moment, you're like, oh, I see why they call this Larch Lake now, because they're such the star of that little bowl.
Athletic Brewing is pioneering non-alcoholic craft beer. Yeah, I said non-alcoholic craft beer. And there's a number of reasons you might want to do that, whether you're training for an event, which a lot of our listeners are, or, if you're babysitting and don't want to be drunk in case something happens. I mean, stuff happens, but you still want to sit down and enjoy the game and have a beer. This is an incredible option for a full-flavored, full-bodied beer. Each can is only 50 to 70 calories, with IPA, golden ales, stouts, and tons of seasonal offerings. Athletic Brewing is a great option if you want that craft brewery taste, but not deal with the effects of alcohol itself. If you'd like to save 15% on your first order, go to athleticbrewing.com and use the code ADVENTURE at checkout. And I'm not super familiar with those trees, but they do change with the seasons, don't they?
Yeah, and it's like usually they're green and normal, and you wouldn't notice. Like most evergreens, they don't change color. And so these, it's a little rare for us to have something like that in this area. And while lots of people are aware of it, it's not something that tons of people have seen. And it's something that we kind of want to try to encourage people to go out, even when there's like snow on the ground and, it's cold in like mid-October, but it's where, the big snows haven't come yet. You can still get up to these places.
Yeah. It's like a typical forest pine or fir that's golden as an aspen is. It's unbelievable. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen that. So I would love to. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, so obviously some of these places were experienced at different times of the year, like you just said. Now, but you said the whole project took close to 10 years?
No, the project for the book.
Yeah, the book itself or gaining the knowledge.
The book is more of a 4.5-year project.
Okay.
Although technically there's probably a couple hikes in there. We started earlier than that, but what you're looking at online, that really started a little over 10 years ago.
Over the course of the last decade, going to that area and knowing that area so well, have you seen a lot of change going on in access to it and popularity?
I would say, yeah, actually, absolutely. A part of that is, anybody who watches the news, Seattle's just kind of exploded in the last 5-6 years, but
yeah,
over the last 10 years, it's really exploded. We've had a huge amount of population influx. And as a result of that, a lot of that influx are people that want access to the outdoors or that's certainly a driver for them. They're excited about it and they want to take advantage of it. So 10 years ago, some of these trailheads were already popular, but it's just exponentially more popular at this point. There's, trailheads are having a really hard time coping. The Forest Service, and on, the state level, those departments, like the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and some other even county level stuff they're working really hard to try and expand trailheads and expand access. And one of the missions, I don't know, I'll say mission, probably that's a little too buzzwordy, but one of our goals, at least, in doing a guide like this and doing that project you're looking at, hiking with my brother, is to really kind of highlight alternatives, because there's, as you're seeing, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hikes you can do. And there are a handful that are just out of control popular. And if we could just get some of those people, just raise awareness of some alternatives that really aren't that much more difficult, or not much more, that are just as easy to access, that are just as they're just as interesting and engaging, and if not more, if we could just try to get that awareness out there so that people can kind of disperse from trailheads that are just literally being choked. Like, trails are just choked in some of these places on a weekend. It's so much that it discourages people from going, which is the opposite of what we want. We want people out on those trails and really taking advantage of some of the natural beauty we have, and really enjoying and therefore supporting, a passion, one of my passions, and a passion for, almost anybody who lives out here.
I'm scrolling through Instagram. I see a lot of things tagged, and that area is often featured. And
oh yeah,
more and more so. I've noticed in the last few years, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's, if there's any place that's Instagrammable, it's the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. Like, it's easily accessible, and it's it's endless opportunities for amazing photography.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what that lake is. I think it's called, I'm looking it up now, Kolchak Lake, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Kolchak?
Yeah, that's the one I just constantly see, and I just think,
yeah,
because I know the places here that look like that and that look just that amazing, and when you go, it's like, holy cow, there's a lot of people here that are not in those pictures. You know what I'm saying? It's deceiving. So, when you turn around from that picture, there's just a trampled shoreline, trash, overused trails, and just tons and tons of people doing a lot of things they shouldn't be. But it is it's definitely getting more and more popular, and it's going to continue to. But you can understand why when you see it. It's not a surprise.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Kolchak has that that has that silt. It's at the bottom of glaciers, so it has that glacial silt that gives it more of a aquamarine greenish hue
Wow.
to it that really makes it pop. And thankfully that one's in the enchantments sort of enchantment zone. So there's a core part of the Alpine Lakes Wilderness that is incredibly popular, and it's almost the iconic part of it, called the enchantments. Kolchak Lake sits just at in a zone that you actually have to have a permit to spend the night there, and it's popular because aside from its beauty that you already see, but it's popular because you can climb up the pass there. It's called Asgard Pass, and pop up into the Upper Enchantment Lakes Basin, which is just a moonscape of alpine lakes and rubble and starkness and awesomeness with great sprawling views and all that. So a lot of people go up there, but there's some control on it. So it's not as bad as it could be.
I'm looking at a map of this area, and gosh, there's so many lakes. It is awesome. So
yeah, it's absurd.
I guess that's why it's literally named Alpine Lakes.
Yeah, it's absurd.
You shared one story of the Lark Lake where just a super memorable night. Is there anything else, any other night or day or an experience that just sticks out to you that's like something you'll never forget about this experience?
Wow. I there's so many. Depends on what kind of experience you want.
Yeah.
There's certainly, we certainly had some miserable experiences. That's part of doing, if you're going to do absolutely everything, it means you're going to do the rough stuff, and you're going to do the stuff and you're going to have to do it on a timeline that isn't perhaps the best. So there's certainly those type of experiences where it was just a slog, and we couldn't believe that we were put ourselves in this situation. And there's other experiences that are you kind of can't believe that you're lucky enough to be there. So like a hike up to, it's almost trite. A hike up to Tuck and Robin Lakes was, they call it the Little Enchantment because it has a similar feel to it. So you get all the way up there, and it's a slog. It is a tough climb, but it's very, very popular. So you got plenty of company along the way to encourage you or to compete with as you're climbing up the way. But you'll get up there, and it was great for us because we got up there. We got there a little ahead of most of the crowd, so we could find a spot. And there's just you get up there, and it's you're seeing the movie, like I think it's called Funny Farm with Chevy Chase, where he's trying to sell the house. And the whole neighborhood is like conspiring to make it seem great. And they're like releasing little animals. It was like that because we got up there, and there's like literally just like some goats wandering by, and it's just pristine. The sun comes out, bluebird skies, there's goats climbing up a little glacier. We camp like on a ridge overlooking like 3 lakes, and you can see Mount Daniels right there, and it feels like it's just a few hundred feet away. It's snow-capped, glaciated mountain, and you're just like, really we're right here. Okay, I guess this is fine. Sure,
yeah,
it's all right.
That's funny.
Well, at least then the sun goes down and we're just eaten alive by mosquitoes. We're like, okay, this is right. Okay, this is better. This is what we expect. There's the punchline. Got it.
It is funny how things just line up and seem like it's not even real. That happened with me in Yosemite last year. Just everything was perfect, and you just think, okay, something's gonna give because there one more amazing thing can't be added to this bowl of ingredients that is just overflowing with amazement. And so, yeah, I totally get the feeling. It's almost bittersweet. Like this moment's so perfect, but it's not going to last very long, and something's going to give. But this shouldn't be happening so perfectly like this. It's almost like it's manufactured. But that's really cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. There's other experiences like we'll try and because you're trying to do a guidebook, right? You need to do the trails.
True. Yeah, you've got a totally different mindset than most people just out there enjoying it. You got to think about mileage and elevation and
and how
water
do
sources
this
probably.
And
yeah.
Does it make sense? And so there's stuff that's not in the book that we just couldn't put in there, but it made sense for us to do to try and connect 2 different trails and try and maximize our time. So there's certainly experiences in which there's decommissioned trails that are on like USGS maps that you could, okay, well, in 1960 there was a trail between these two things. Maybe we should check that out, and that will connect us over to this place instead of us having to go 10 miles out of our way. And I very memorable experiences of just, there's no trail on the GPS. We just have a very outdated map and some vague trail markers, just trying to go like, okay, we can do this. This is fine. We got this. We're good. And, I'll never forget those experiences because they can be frustrating and you can get turned around. And, we have a huge amount of experience in the trail, and we have the equipment to do it, that we felt that we were safe about it. But it's also one of those experiences like you'll never forget, like going, is there still a trail here? Or are we following a game trail? And, so, you can't put that stuff, we wouldn't put that in the book, but it's also
right.
extra stuff that we did. Like, okay, we're going to make this work by following, what it clearly is 70-year-old trailblazes that are just scarred into trees. And,
wow.
So that was really cool. It was really fun to do. And to, you mentioned earlier, you might get a little bit bored. It's like, well, we found ways to keep it super interesting and engaging for ourselves.
That's awesome, man. Did you find anything really unexpected out there? Like just a random, I don't know, car chassis or something? Just like, how the heck did this get here?
Actually, there is one hike in there where I did find, we literally, I would say it's only because you prompted me that I remembered this. Like, we literally found like a car chassis in the most unexpected place.
I don't know. They just seem to be out there, and I guess they're pretty resilient, so it sticks out.
Right.
So it's a thing.
But it's, it was Granite Lakes, and it just had no business. It wasn't like a truck. It had no business being there. And it was, it was like a streetcar. And it
weird.
I'm just getting it right here. I think I have it in here. No, I don't think I do. But it was like a Studebaker or something that is on the other side of this creek.
Wow.
There's no bridge. There's no road. It was on an abandoned trail up to a mine that we wanted to check out. What is this? Why is this here? There's got to be some amazing story about how this thing ended up in a place that it should not be. Like, we can't even figure out, I mean, there must have been a bridge there at some point. We can't figure out how the thing would have made it up as high as it did.
Like a group of people just carried it up there.
I know, right? There's probably a super interesting story. A super interesting story there. And I don't know, there's a lot of, this area is full of, it's full of history like that. And that's one of the things about the book that I personally like to bring to it. So when you read these hikes, there's a little bit of history in all of them because it's in my blood to want to know why a trail is there or to explain why you're going to see what you're going to see. So this area, ton of timber, timber industry was there. They laid down railroad tracks. They stripped the sides of the hills. They made trails out to lakes to try and get water for their camps. There's also a ton of mining. There was a lot of, everyone was trying to strike it rich back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So they were going out into the hills trying to find the El Dorado. And so there's a lot of roads that were cut, and there's a lot of places where there's water. There's often mineralization that could be valuable, and you can extract it. So there's a lot of there's stories behind all this stuff, and you'll get up to a little bit of lake. You'll climb up to a lake and you're like, I feel like no one has ever been here before. And then you'll look behind a rock and there's like a tunnel that drills into the mountainside, like 15 feet, and a couple of old, like metal piece of rebar or piles of raw ore that got piled up somewhere. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm not the first person here, but they've cleaned it up real nice.
Time, man. Time will take its toll. There's probably some like camp there. Back in the day, There was like a couple hundred people living. That is funny, man. There's tons of abandoned mines out here too. I think they estimate some ridiculous number around the country of abandoned mines. And I remember just being out in the mountains one day, thinking the same thing. Like, man, they're in the off trail in this super desolate range, and there was an entirely intact mining operation from that's been decommissioned for like 80 years. And it had just been it's just sitting out there. There was a little graffiti, but it was mostly intact. And I was like, there's just nowhere you can go that someone hasn't been, around here. Jeez.
But there's something also kind of fun about that feeling. Like, I finally made it, and then you turn to the corner, and it's like, oh, someone else not only made it here, but they lived here. They were established here.
Yeah, they were like making a living
today.
Here.
Yeah, but it's also it's worth noting that like now it feels remote and desolate, and no one can get there, and within a relatively, geologically speaking, relatively short time period. And that's kind of nice to see. You're like, oh
yeah,
it's recovered. All right, that's nice.
Yeah, I think John Muir said something about that. What is it? There's no scar the earth can't heal. Something along those lines.
Yeah. That oddly, he said it much more eloquently than I could. Who knew?
Yeah, same here. I didn't. I just butchered it, but I also know he didn't like to write, so any words that he put together were painful to him a little bit. But you and your brother are absolutely probably considered, the experts on this area. Do you know what's next for you guys? Are you guys, starting to spread slowly in a different direction, or you think you're just gonna maybe double the hikes up, or just totally jump into a new place, like taking it to the ocean? Now you're going to do kayaking routes.
We are working there. We have another book with the mountaineers that we're currently
cool.
working on that has that is a slightly different sort of approach. It's not a particular area, it's statewide, and it's really looking more at like nature and wildflowers and that sort of stuff. Like, where can you go to kind of enjoy just the plant aspect of it. So we're not botanists. We're not like writing a book that is like a field guide for identifying every plant under the sun. It's more of a do you like flowers? Oh, okay. Well, so do we. And it's nice to have a little bit of color on the trail, and it's a good time of year to hike. And because the thing about that is it's not summer, it's earlier, and so they tend to be hikes that are they're lower elevation, and there may be, that's what we bring to the table every time, is we always try and bring trails and trailheads that are really underutilized and not hidden, not unknown, but definitely underused. So we try to bring that, okay, well, there's the popular ones. You probably know about those. How about, we'll include some of those, but also here's a selection of ones that you might not have tried before and you might not have heard of before, and you're not going to find a lot about them. So, check out our guide or check out our website so you can, try something new. So that's what we're working on next. And then after that, we have some ideas that we're working on that we're still sort of discussing, but I think they're too far out. They're too tenuous at this point.
This episode is also sponsored by CS Instant Coffee, 100% Arabica coffee with compostable packaging. And you can find them at csinstant.coffee and use adventure at checkout for 20% off. Another 10 years away still. You got to write a book on flowers, right?
Yeah, right.
No, that's really cool. I've realized, when someone like you and your brother take on a project like this, it inevitably leads to something else in a different direction that you maybe didn't know beforehand. An example, that we had a guy write a book. We just had him on the show. He wrote a book about making his own through hiking route. And that inevitably led him into this curiosity into why things are named what they are out in the wilderness and in cities. Yeah. And so he wrote an entire book naming thousands of, or telling the story behind thousands of natural, I don't even know, landmarks, why they're named, why the lake is called this, why this street is called this, why this area is called this, and who did this. And it just became a passion for him that, he didn't know he had originally.
Yeah. And I feel him on that. Like one thing that the book does, the one I wrote does, is there's a whole section in the back on just why different lakes are named what they're named.
Oh, perfect.
Because I can't not, I have to know.
You have to know.
So yeah. And you can't always find
you
it.
know, that's crazy, man. So was that more difficult at times trying to find why?
Oh yeah, sometimes yeah, it takes a lot of research. And sometimes it's easier than others. And thankfully, because it's such a defined area, once you kind of know where the strings are for some, you can go back to them and go like, this is probably like this one. So you kind of know where to look after a little while. But the initial lift it was pretty hard to kind of like, okay, well, let's try and piece this together. What happened? Because they're all named, 100 plus years ago. And you kind of like, okay,
Wow.
well, where's the records for this? What is it? And it wasn't super important to people at the time to sort of like write down exactly why they were doing what they were doing. So, like, you gotta, it's funny that you mentioned it. I was like, that's a nice segue. Thank you. That you talked about place names. So yeah, it's a little bit of a lift, but it's also super interesting. And oftentimes once you know why something was named, the reason that it was named, like a lake is named this, then you can go, oh, okay, I see. That's probably related to why the trail was made. And then you can go work backwards from there to tell the story of, that maybe it's just me, but I like knowing, when I'm standing at a place, I'm not the first person there. There was trail. I followed the trail, but there was probably a reason that this trail got made, and it's that context, like sort of that spans back through, decades and decades into the past. That context I think, makes for a richer hiking experience. I think that connecting yourself to a community of hikers, that legacy is, it's a little bit, you get a little bit more of a meaning behind it. And, maybe, like I said, maybe it's just me, but I like to think that it's just a fun way to really ground yourself to the trail.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a different layer to view it through, almost like adding a little more vividness, a little more, beauty to the area, a little more understanding. Wow. And then yeah, you definitely, you really feel like you know the place then rather than just visiting. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And the more understanding you have, the more you can kind of connect with the land and connect with the legacy of why it's there. And it's also sometimes incredibly insightful. There's places in the enchantments that people find, think about the stunning natural beauty of it. They're like, oh, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And, not to ruin it, but there's, the reservoirs. They're, back, they're there.
They're
The way
man-made.
they look. They're not man, but they kind of, they are tapped for irrigation. So the lakes were there, but the level of the
Oh,
lake
I
and
see.
what's exposed and, what's there are certain lakes that are manipulated. They're not pristine wilderness because they were done before it became wilderness. So not pristine wilderness, and like knowing that it puts what you're looking at into context. And Kolchak Lake that we were talking about, there's a dam on it. There's a dam that can lower it and feed water into the irrigation. It's very difficult to get to, and no one really pays attention to it, but it's there. And knowing that, and knowing that choices, there were not only were there choices made to make it into some water supply, but then there was further choices made to maybe let's not do that so much, and that the route that was taken between the people that initially tapped it to the wilderness designation to the decisions that are going on right now as to whether or not to repair the dam so it's more useful. Like that's an interesting story to me. And you put that in the backdrop of truly stunning natural beauty. And like I said, it's a lot more engaging.
Yeah, I had no idea. But it doesn't surprise me at all now that you mentioned that. I mean, I know plenty of lakes here, plenty of the most beautiful, scenic, iconic scenery here is unnatural in a lot of ways. The scenery isn't, and the water's real, but the way it's sitting there is definitely, it's been altered from what it naturally is supposed to be, which does make you look at it in a different way. Still beautiful, but I don't know. There's other places that aren't, and
yeah, what does that mean to you, and how does that work? Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting way of. Anyway, I don't want to harp on it too much.
No, but I actually got a
sort
question.
of like what I'm super into.
No, that's great, and I was going to ask you, how much time away, I'd say percentage wise, if when you're not working, when you're not maybe dealing with some of your other obligations, how much time are you spending on this project, or were you spending on this project?
Let's see.
Like your free time, I guess.
Yeah. It's definitely been a spectrum of stuff. So we have dialed back our the amount we're doing simply because with this book and with the intensity of trying to do this particular area, we had a little burnout, and so we needed to take some time back. But I would say of the overarching period of time, this last decade, we were, 10% of our time was spent, you add it all up, it was every single weekend. That was just for the hiking. And then in addition to that, there's all the production of it. So writing it, researching it, putting the maps together, tracing the GPS tracks, transposing them, then taking all that data and putting it into the various online platforms that we had. That's just the hiking with my brother stuff. And then at a certain point, we were writing books. This is our second book. We were writing books, and that has its own layer of time commitment. There's more exacting standards. There's editing. There's rounds of research. There's photo curation. All sorts of additional time suck on it. And that 10% doesn't sound like a lot until you devote 10% of your life. And then I would think about your week.
Okay.
What if your work, the amount of week you had was just 6 days, and you just didn't have that seventh day because you've devoted that entire seventh day to just hiking, to doing this, and you didn't have that available for anything else. And I realized that doesn't equal 10%, but we didn't devote the entire day. We still slept and ate, and there was some waking up and
right. But 10% of your total time.
But you sort of it doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that it should be 10% of my waking time.
Wow.
It could be very consuming, but it's easy to devote a ton of time to something that you're super excited about doing.
Yes.
And there's all sorts of mental gymnastics you can go through to justify that to not only yourself, but also to, your family. Like, hey, I'm getting a ton of exercise. I'm staying fit. Hey, I am exploring natural spaces. Hey, look at I'm able to produce something. Hey, this is there's a lot of justification for it. But it's also pretty awesome to go out with your brother for 3 days and experience some truly awesome stuff.
That's really cool. Definitely really cool. And I want to say that is a lot of time, but I think that is something. I think we're all spending probably that much time doing something, and for most people, I guarantee it's not something they want to do nearly as much as something this interesting and this enjoyable and rewarding. So I probably spend 10% of my time just goofing off or scrolling through the internet, just wasting time, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that they're in this world of just of bumblebee kind of or honeybee kind of experiences where you're jumping from flower to flower to flower to location to location to location, to be able to devote to something so detailed and so holy, to be able to write a book about it, and for a decade to be able to commit to one area, one thing, man, that's got to have its own just layers and layers of rewarding feelings that you just can't experience otherwise, because I don't think I've ever devoted myself to an area that much for that long, and to understand it that deeply. That's just got to be, I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of rare nowadays and becoming more and more rare.
Yeah, it might be. It's hard for me to know. I mean, obviously there's not a ton of guidebook authors out there, but there's certainly enthusiasts that do that sort of thing. It reminds me actually of a story about the enchantments, which I know I'm just talking about them all the time, but they're really sort of the crown jewel. So
yeah, definitely. Feel free.
It's not my story. It's somebody else's story. It's this couple who who started, they didn't discover the enchantments, but they really popularized them. They they uh, they did a ton of work, and right now I want to make sure I get their names right, so I'm going to just make sure that
Yeah, no worries.
and you'll see once I tell you their name, you'll know why I'm dithering on it and making sure that I get it correct, because it's a popular it's a popular last surname. I want to make sure that I have it correct. Yeah, I was right. So it's Bill and Peggy Stark. So the Starks.
Okay.
It's just, whether you're at Game of Thrones or you're thinking about Iron Man, Stark comes up a lot.
Right.
So Bill and Peggy Stark. I want to make sure I got it right. I didn't actually say the wrong one, because I've heard those because of those little cultural touch points at the moment.
Right.
They started in the 1950s. They went up to the enchantments, and they were so enchanted by them, no pun intended, that they went back every year for close to 50 years. That is what they did. They named a ton of the naming up there is named for just by them. They made their own maps. They devoted themselves to popularizing and just boostering this area. And it is similar to what you're saying. Like that became part of who they were. And we owe a lot to, the amount of effort that individuals, just a couple of individuals who spend enormous amounts of time devoting themselves to single subjects and getting that depth of knowledge, and then sharing that depth of knowledge and passion for it. The enchantments in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness wouldn't have graduated into being the protected wilderness area it is today without the groundwork laid by people like Bill and Peggy Stark, and then all the wilderness advocates that were inspired by their work to come to that area, and also sort of catch the bug, and form in the 1960s the Alpine Lakes Protection Society, and drive a movement that had to be done on a federal level, a huge movement, and that took an enormous amount of time to designate. It's one of the earliest wilderness areas, because they literally made a book of they did photography. They made a book. They put it on the president's desk to say, "Hey, you really, really need to protect this. Look at this stuff." And they managed to make it happen. But without that initial groundwork of just a couple who got really, really, really into something, we all get to enjoy stunning wilderness landscape that's preserved, protected. And the initial plans for how they were going to protect it looked nothing like what the Forest Service put out. Some initial plans like, okay, we'll protect it. And, they protected basically nothing. So
Dang.
Without that work, we wouldn't have what we have today. So when you're talking about that passion, it really it goes back to people that worked really hard to get us where we're at.
Yeah, and you look at any national park, any area, it usually started with the movement of a person or a small community or a group.
Absolutely.
That basically spurred on a movement that got the government's attention and then gave it into the hands of the only power that really has the ability to protect it on that level. It led to what we are all able to experience now, and what you've been able to do for the last decade. And it takes people like you as well to continue that, because, relatively speaking, these places geologically have been around. We have just shown up in the last, millisecond of their existence. And
right.
However, we can do more damage in that millisecond than millions of years of weathering can. It's incredible. So it does take, it's still all so new in so many ways, relatively speaking, and it's going to take just people to understand it and to love it and to experience it, first of all, and experience it in appropriate ways and healthy ways, and to fall in love with it and to continue protecting it. It's not guaranteed, so it definitely takes more and more people loving it, really, really loving it.
Yeah,
and I think that's evident, is that you spent so much time with your brother out there hiking. That's pretty evident that you love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit of a fan.
A bit of.
Just a little.
I really like this place. I think I might write a book or something.
Maybe
That's incredible, man. That's awesome. So speaking of which, how can people find it and how can they buy it?
Oh, sure. You can. It just hit the warehouse actually. So the Mountaineers just received it this week. So you can. It was available for pre-order. You can go on Amazon. You could go on. You could go to the Mountaineers website. Um, there's a number of different ways that you can do it. It's all digital. It's going to get to bookstores. In I don't know how. I assume the distribution. I'm not privy to the distribution of the physical books, but in major bookstores in Washington State, it's going to be at. I don't know if it's going to go any further than that. What kind of relationship the Mountaineers have with places like Colorado or California, which are they're far away, but for people that are really into this stuff, anything in the West is not too absurd to have to maybe want to pick up a guide like this. So, but the easiest thing is to go to the Mountaineers website. You can also go to our Facebook page. There's links there. You could go to hikingwithmybrother.com. There's links there. The Facebook is just hiking with my brother. So you can, all of those places are easy ways to, click and pick it up and have that, have a great guide. And I would say, go and take a look at it, even if you're not thinking about buying it, because the pictures alone, even the cover is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, you got to pick a good picture for the cover.
Oh yeah,
it is pretty. I'm looking at it right now.
It is pretty. And my brother went through, and I definitely took some of the photography, but just a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of pictures that we submitted we overwhelmed the Mountaineers with. We're like, okay, whoa, you got a couple of pictures here. So they have their own stories about how they had to struggle to pick out, like, okay, well, we got to pick out the best ones here. It's really hard to do. You always want to include as much as possible. They did a fantastic job, and you look at just the photos that they chose and the way that they laid it out. It's we're pretty proud of it, and we're really happy with the care and just the excitement that the Mountaineers put into it. They were really excited about this project, and really cheered us on, and really did everything they could to make a really awesome product.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get out there one day and explore that area, because it's an area I have only seen very, very just from the road, honestly, during a snowstorm. So didn't see much.
Yeah.
Have to get back out there.
Definitely, ping me if you're going to do it, and I'll give you some recommendations.
Well, appreciate you so much coming on and telling us about this. It's rare that we get to talk to somebody who's so experienced in one area. So it's just a totally different level of understanding than, someone doing a through hike, for instance, that just sees places in passing. So this is neat, and this is awesome. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. Like, I have all this knowledge, and I just want to share it.
Yeah.
So
writing a book.
I'll talk about it as much as you want. Perhaps too much.
In all your free time, 10% of it at least.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, yeah. Well, have a great weekend, and thank you so much again. This was awesome.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.
All right. Yes, sir. All right. See you, Nathan.
Bye.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means the world to us that you want to spend your time with us. If you'd like to help us further, please just leave us a review on iTunes, share us on social media, tell your friends about us. You can become a patron, a supporter of the show for $5 a month at patreon.com/Adventure Sports Podcast. And if you know somebody that would make a good guest, reach out. We're always looking for good adventure and outdoor stories. And lastly, thank you to our sponsors, whose messages follow right now. Athletic Brewing makes the best non-alcoholic craft beer. Go to their website at athleticbrewing.com and use the code in our show notes to save 15% on your first order. After all this adventure talk, if you're needing some gear yourself, but you need some advice before buying, go to backpacktribe.com, where you can ask questions to the owners who have experience with all the gear, as well as all of it for sale right there on their website.